Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. South Charleston, Ohio, March 25th, 2024. In a story that is sure to make your blood boil, 61-year-old Lola Hall was a driver working for Uber. She had received a call to retrieve a package from a house. Now, these kinds of requests are not the majority of Uber's workload, but it's also not unusual for the driver service to do it either, believe it or not. Just another day on the side hustle for Miss Hall. But unbeknownst to Miss Hall, the house she had been instructed to go to was inhabited by a trigger-happy miscreant named William Brock, age 81. Now, this next part has to be taken with a huge grain of salt, because the information's coming from an individual who murdered a woman in cold blood, and as we all know, when these white supremacists are cornered, that's when they really start lying. In the case of Brock, what he claims is that he had received a phone call from someone claiming to be from a local court, saying that a family member of his was incarcerated and that he had a bond of a significant amount of money. Now, the caller, and keep in mind this is according to Brock, who murdered a woman in cold blood, the tone of the caller changed from, "I'm an officer of the court," to, "We have this subject hostage, this is a ransom demand." This is according to the killer. When Miss Hall arrived at the home and got out of her car, her dashboard camera captured what happened next. She approached the front door and Brock came out, confronting her with a gun, demanding to know who she was working for. And that's when Brock did something that showed that for him, this was about far more than just some strange phone calls demanding money. He took Mrs. Hall's cell phone away from her and blocked her in, wouldn't let her leave. This is a good old boy thinking that his racial privilege means that he's basically the police, at least where black people are concerned. Keep in mind, at no point did he even attempt to call the police. If he truly believed that this was some criminal coming to extort him, then why wasn't that his very first move? Being confronted by this aggressive, gun-waving bigot, Miss Hall tried to get away. She started screaming for help. The murderer shot her. She was calling for help, and he shot her twice more until she was dead. Now, of course, we have the usual elements inside of and outside of the white media who are trying to find a way to whitewash this, trying to find a way to muddy the waters and claim that, oh, well, tragic as this is, it was just some freak incident. I mean, how often could something like this even happen? Seriously. Who ever heard of such a thing? Except we keep seeing this happening to black people over and over again. Last year you had Ralph Yarl, a teenager who knocked on a white man's door, and the white man shot him, nearly killing this boy. And you've also had numerous cases of black FedEx and UPS drivers who get sent to make deliveries in white neighborhoods, and then those residents try to block their delivery vans in and start shooting at them. So the fact that this woman worked for Uber wasn't the problem. Even when you have globally recognized companies with their logos on their delivery vans, you still have white residents who do the exact same thing this Brock creep did. So this isn't about not recognizing the person standing in front of them. This is about people with racial privilege recognizing they live in a society that will enable and protect racist, violent behavior. I'll bet you never heard a story about a scam in which the scammers weren't the worst part of it, huh? Let's be clear. What this Brock character did, he would have done under any circumstances. The alleged scam phone call, that was simply his pretense to do what he was wanting to do anyway. Miraculously, the killer was actually arrested in this case. We don't know if the cops took him to Burger King or not. Now, of course, as all these white supremacists do, Brock is trying to claim that he shot Miss Hall in self-defense. He claimed that, well, he didn't know if she was trying to get a gun from his car or not. So he decides that he's going to literally get into a wrestling match with her. He takes her cell phone from her. This guy has his arms all over this woman and claiming that he didn't know if she was trying to get a gun or not. Because he was so scared that he wouldn't let her go. Sounds just like the same lie the police always tell under these circumstances, doesn't it? Miss Hall, of course, didn't have a gun. And as the authorities themselves were forced to have to admit, this woman did not threaten this idiot, didn't assault him, didn't do anything. He was threatened by a woman who had not done anything to him. So what was the real threat here? There was none. Other than the fact that she was black, and he thought he could get away with something. And why not? The authorities always let the William Brocks of the world get away with exactly these kind of murders. We'll continue with the Moment of Truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready. And always carry your steel. Power tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. Brock was originally arraigned on a murder charge. That has since been changed to an indictment for 3 counts of murder, 1 count of felonious assault, and 1 count of kidnapping. When news of this heinous murder broke, there was predictably huge public outrage, but there was also predictably the same old elements of racial privilege swinging into action to protect this guy. The judge gave this creep a slap-on-the-wrist bail of $200,000, which he easily posted. So the fix is in, the bad guys are on code. This happens to be a white man who killed a black person, so the racists in Ohio, which is a notoriously racist state, don't want him to go to prison. They're going to be claiming that he's too old to go to the hoosgow, so as far as they're concerned, they want to announce some felony charges for the cameras just to quell the public outrage, but as soon as those cameras are gone, you know that the effery will begin in earnest. There will be the predictable dropping of the charges. The judge will throw some of them out, and the prosecutors will downgrade the charges on their own, and then we'll see these scumbags saying that he's too old to go to prison, that he's a widower perhaps, or he's suffering from Alzheimer's, and he's not responsible for his actions. These white supremacist authorities have done this where mass shooters are concerned, particularly racist mass shooters. So to do it for this wrinkled-up racist, that's a given. He'll be given a plea deal at some point, I imagine, and they'll lecture the public that he's just too old to go to prison, and prison's not the right place for him anyway. This was all just a tragic confluence of events, but he said he's sorry and the public needs to let it go. The murder of Mrs. Hall happens to be part of an overall culture of anti-black violence that is supported and protected across the board. When you hear about so-called swatting, that's usually some suburban punks, some white supremacist trash who are doing it. Which is why the lawmakers are so reluctant to write any legislation to do anything substantive about it. They'll give a few words, a couple of hollow policy proposals, but nobody talking about putting hard felony charges on the books, or that we need entire task forces to go after these creeps. This refusal to do anything about this problem is for the same reason that you don't see a war on meth. Just look at who the users are. But let's not be dense here. As I've mentioned earlier, there are numerous incidents like this one that happen to black delivery drivers for UPS, FedEx, DHL, and no doubt postal workers too. These racists, they wait until a black person shows up, then block in their vehicle and begin shooting at them. That's a pattern. And the fact that it happens so many times in so many different places is proof that these are not random accidents at all. There's a program at work here. Has been for a very long time. And not one of those incidents involved a scam phone call, by the way. It was just racists who wanted to kill a black person. So don't let the white media or the crooked authorities or anyone else try to tell you that what happened to Ms. Hall was just the fault of these alleged scammers. As these other cases prove, the scammers are merely a distinction without a difference. So my prediction is that whatever comes out of this, it won't be true justice, because justice would have been for a society to punish the William Brocks before they kill. This keeps happening because for 500 years this country has maintained a permissive social and legal environment for precisely this kind of anti-black violence, and the people like William Brock who commit this violence know it. This is the reason why I keep repeatedly telling black people you need to be prepared to protect yourselves at all times. That's because the William Brocks of this world, they make a calculated risk that the black person that they're about to kill isn't armed, isn't able to protect themselves. And in too many cases, they're right. This equation needs to be changed. We need to change the calculus that these racists have in their minds so that they understand when you get ready to try to call yourself pulling that would-be racial ambush, that just might be the last mistake you make. As for the octogenarian murderer, he gets no sympathy from me and he shouldn't get a shred of it from you. When the same crooked judges and DAs in Ohio suddenly start trying to tiptoe towards, well, he's so old, can we really lock him up? Is that really right? They say he's older than dirt. Who cares? He should remain in prison until they put him in the dirt. He's a murderer, and he should be treated like one. He put himself in this position. Him and nobody else. Not Miss Hall, and not any scammers either. He murdered that woman because he wanted to. And that being the case, if you can't do the time, then don't do the crime. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: John Guillory, Andre Evans, Emily, Wesley Monroe, and Rowan Wings. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.